Hello and welcome to Conversations with Carrie. I'm your host, Carrie Adlington, and I'm here today with the wonderful Carel van Apeldoorn. He's a 49-year-old Dutchman living in China since 2005, and Carel is a lifelong entrepreneur who became a coach in 2020. He's helping expat professionals optimize their energy, work and relationships, and I'm so grateful that he's here today with us to share some of his wisdom. And I wonder, Carel, if you would start us off by telling us something interesting about yourself that not many people know.
Yeah, that is a great question. Let me think about that for a second here. You know, the thing that most people don't know about me is probably that, so I started my entrepreneurial journey very young, but around age 30, people would always assume that I was about 40 years old. And I was like, man, what's happening there? And now in 2 weeks, I turned 50 and people still think I'm 40 years old. So like I would say the hidden secret is here that I guess over the last 20 years, I haven't aged. And that's probably something that nobody knows.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. I bet it's not something that most people can say about themselves either. So that's amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate that. So I'm curious, in your own words, what does the game of life mean to you, especially for those of us who are just starting out on our entrepreneurial journeys, or perhaps even considering starting our entrepreneurial journeys, or for those who are already taking those steps and creating a business that is helping them to create a life of fulfillment for themselves? I wonder if you could share with us what that means for you.
Yes, totally. I mean, I think for the most part of my life, I was trying to figure out that question. And it was only till I met the work of Brian Johnson that he articulated so clearly that I felt like, okay, now I have a framework. So the way he articulates it is to be the best version of yourself, moment to moment to moment. And by using your character strength in service of yourself and others. So that's kind of the game of life. And also it answers also the question how to play it well. Because I think for the longest time, to be very honest, for me as an entrepreneur, so I started my entrepreneurial journey in my teenager years and was always infatuated. My late grandfather at the time, but my uncle took over a business and I would go there, I would work there in the summer, and I wanted to be an entrepreneur as well. It was always a dream. But the idea was always to go harder, faster, longer. And I burned out so many times in my life. I've had so many depressions, episodes of depressions, and I never really knew how to leverage me, myself, my strength. Till I came across the work of Brian and the way he articulated it, and that was just a game changer, because that gave me the framework of understanding how to go about it.
That's amazing. So what I'm hearing, and it's not what I hear as you're sharing that, Carel, and I really appreciate your vulnerability in your share as well. Because it's so common that on this journey of entrepreneurship that we do get caught in the doing trap. We've got to do, we tick the boxes, we get those jobs done, we burn ourselves out, we then pick ourselves up, we do it all over again. And many of us end up in that trap of exhaustion and doing. So I'm curious to know more about Brian Johnson's work.
Yes.
And how that's helped you to come into that, I'm assuming, more of a being space, more of a sustainable way of working.
Totally. So his approach is definitely, and that. So when I came across his work, it was like, oh, I met a brother of a different mother. It was really that sort of awakening moment. Like, this guy really talks my language. So check him out for sure. And sorry, can you answer or give me the question one more time?
I can. So I might even rephrase it a little bit for you. But it's basically, what was it that you learned from Brian Johnson that helped you to transform that relationship of you doing in a way that became sustainable?
Okay, perfect. So it starts all by understanding what your character strengths are. And so it starts by looking at yourself. And a great resource is go to viacharacter.org. You can do a free test there. It takes you 20 minutes and you will get an overview of 24 character strength, and they're ranked 1 to 24, and look at the top 5 and then also look at the bottom 5. What are your stretches? So getting an understanding there, like, okay, what are my strengths? And what I really believe, so that was more I learned and connected to a belief that I did, and I do believe that applying your character strength on a daily basis and through that expressing the best version of yourself definitely leads to you providing value to the world, and at the same time being aligned with yourself. Because I think as entrepreneurs, it's so easy to lose perspective, because the name of the game is dollars and cents. And that's ultimately what we decided as society to measure the success in entrepreneurship with. And so it's easy to lose yourself in that competition and then forget about who you really are and then get disaligned. And then there's this wonderful book, and it's called The Second Mountain. And it's all about, we climb the first mountain and it's actually not our mountain. It is just what society wants from us. So what I learned is really looking at myself. Who am I at my core? What am I good at? And then work with that to express the best version of myself. And then it becomes also much more easy. And then in the framework where we look at energy, work, and relationships all together, on a daily basis, we try to advance in all 3 areas towards the identities that we have created for ourselves. So we have an holistic approach in basically developing ourselves and creating results. And so that is the big thing that I learned. And with that, putting self-care first. It's energy first. So it's not time optimization, it's energy optimization. So you can bring that energy to your work and to your relationships.
Yes, absolutely. And you just blow me away there. You shared so much. So I just want to just reflect back and just make sure that I've got all the gems that you just shared. There's so much gold. So what you were saying is start with finding out what your strengths are, what your core things that you are good at. And there's a tool you mentioned online called viacharacter.org. Something.
So
viacharacter.org.
Yes, it's from Penn State University in the US. It's where positive psychology has been founded by Martin Seligman, and they have this free survey that's been taken by millions of people already, and it's there just for you to take, and in 20 minutes you get a sense of what your strengths are.
Beautiful. And I love that it gives you a big list of strengths, right from what you're really good at to ones that you're not so good at. And you were saying take the top 5 and the bottom 5, so you know what you're really good at and the things where we have our stretches, where we can learn to perhaps bring those into our lives a little bit better so that we can make things a little bit more smooth. Is that your thinking around that?
So my thinking is for sure to find ways in daily life, and I can share also later how I do that, but apply these character strengths consciously. but then at the same time be aware of those stretches, because probably you can relate to that as well, but I can give so many examples where I allow my stretches to get in the way of my personal growth. It's the fear around those stretches that takes over, that prevent me from doing what I should do. And not so much should do in terms of society, but should do for myself. Because in so many instances, it inhibits your personal growth. So being aware what those things are, being able to recognize them when they show up, and then already be prepared. So when they show up, what are you going to do? Because we could talk today. So for instance, maybe public speaking, call something that still triggers my anxiety. Yeah, it does. But I can make a plan, like what I'm going to do when it shows up. And so if I decide up front that I'm going to lean in that discomfort, then I'm not as overwhelmed, or I allow the fear to be there while I still advance. But if I don't think about these things, it becomes really easy to be taken off guard and then go with the feeling and then end up not serving yourself. Or at least that's my experience. I don't know if you can relate to that.
I can absolutely relate to what you're saying, 100%. And yeah, I've experienced that myself, where I've gone into an experience and been totally just completely blind swiped by my weaknesses because I wasn't aware of them, and I didn't have anything prepared in advance that would help me to go, oh yeah, it's that again. This is what I need to do about it. If it's just like, it's okay, I know you're there, and you can just go away. It's fine, I've got this.
Yeah.
Because it's just our primeval part of us that's just trying to keep us safe. It's like the little nagging inner child that doesn't want to be thrown in front of the bus, that's saying, no, please don't do that. It's like, I'm not going to die. I'm not going to be harmed from this. It's just the thinking that gets in the way, isn't it?
Totally. And it's still this primal response, the fight or flight response back in the days when all kind of big wild animals were chasing us. It was useful. But going to a social function, let's assume that it's a safe place to go. You will get home from that. But you still feel like you're on the verge of dying.
Yeah, I hear you. Anything that's uncomfortable or unfamiliar can trigger that fear response in us, whether it's the fight or flight. And I think quite often for many of us, especially, I don't know about all of us, but certainly for myself, it's more the flight response that comes up. I want to run away. I want to get away. And perhaps some of our listeners can resonate with that, because you don't know what's going to happen. And yeah, it's just a primeval response that kept us safe back in the day when the saber-toothed tigers and mammoths and all that sort of carry on, where there was real danger. And now it's okay, I'm going to get up and maybe be vulnerable, meet people that I've never met before, and I don't really know what's expected of me. And the fact is, half the time, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experienced this, all those things that I've really worried about have been nothing to really worry about at all. They've actually turned out okay, or better than I could have ever imagined. And a quote springs to mind, if you don't mind me sharing, and I might misquote him a little bit, but Mark Twain. So I've had a lot of problems in my life, some of which actually came true.
Yes, that's beautiful. Yeah, and that's probably just 1% or less.
Yeah, exactly. It's not many at all. Beautiful. Thank you so much for what you're sharing so far. I'm really appreciating it.
You're welcome.
And
can I add something to this?
Yeah.
So
yes,
maybe also
do.
in the context, then how do you go about this? So when I circle it back again to character strength and virtues, let's say in this context, courage can be a virtue, can be a strength, can be a stretch. For me on a daily basis, it really becomes like, I am gonna practice courage. So the way I'm gonna go about this, give a little bit of structure for our listeners, and also how you could apply that for yourself, people at home who are listening right now and wanna use this tool. So you have your strength, but then what you do is you define an identity for yourself. An identity at the level of energy, an identity or multiple identities for work, and then one or multiple identities for relationships. So, and those identities are guiding stars. Those are aspirational identities. And so, for instance, in my work, the identity to be a professional coach, world-class professional coach. So as soon as I step in those shoes and I associate myself with a world-class professional coach, then certain expectations come with that. And also a certain drive. Because if I say, like, I step into the identity of a sloppy coach, then there is more wiggle room, like you feel that when you step into the shoes of a world-class professional coach. So you take that identity that you aspire to work towards. So it's a guiding star. It's not, let's say, a goal that you're going to accomplish in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So it's a guiding star. You use that. Then you take the virtue or the character strength that you want to practice that day. So, for instance, courage. Yeah. And then you attach a behavior to that. So I could say, like, today I'm going to commit to a public speaking event. So, and you can do that every day. And I do that every night. For these 3 categories, I identify. So in energy, it's being a world-class runner. It's a pro coach. It's a student of the coaching world. It is a super dad, a soulmate. Those are identities that I use. And then I figure out through the character strength that I want to practice, the behavior I'm going to express that day. Because that identity already takes me to the place of expressing my best self, because it's the guiding star. I'm nowhere there. And then by doing that, I'm really aligned with who I want to be. And so then I take even tiny, tiny steps towards becoming. And my experience is, and also from other people I've been working with, and from other people who use this framework, that is very rewarding and very sustainable.
Beautiful. I love what you shared. That's very structured. And what I want to just highlight that it's not the goal. The goal it's like, that's kind of like our waypoint. It's where we're heading towards, but what really gets us there is the being. So who we are, it's our identities, it's I'm trying to think of another word for identity. Role talk springs to mind.
Alter ego.
Alter ego, I love that, yeah. And actually designing that for the different aspects of our life, because who we are as a professional coach is not what we want inside the bedroom or on the running field or anything like that. So each part, although we're a whole human being, there's parts of us that are going to be more necessary in certain aspects of those areas of our lives, whether it's in work, relationship, or play.
Totally.
And then we can, to those aspects, we can bring our strengths and we can bring our stretches, and we can choose how we're going to manifest those each day by actually planning ahead and going, okay, well, what would that behavior look like? What's something that I could do that would help me to work on that strength or that weakness, to bring it forward, to make it even better than it was before. So you were mentioning courage, so doing something that's unfamiliar, accepting something that maybe makes you go eek a little bit. And maybe with that, there's also a little bit of excitement, because you know that in that action, you're also moving towards the person that you want to become, which is super exciting, is it not?
Totally. And you probably know this, but maybe some of the listeners don't know. It turns out that at a neurological level, anxiety and excitement are actually the same things. It's the same part of the brain lights up when you're anxious and when you're excited. So it's also about how we label those moments. And so it's a great strategy there, that when you feel anxious, to start label it, hey, I'm excited, let's bring it on, versus, oh, I need to down regulate. I need to calm down, because that turns out to be very difficult in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. And and I have heard of that before. And it's the same biochemistry, because it's the same parts of the brain get lit up. It's the same biochemistry. Physiologically, the experience is the same. The only thing is, like you're saying, is our thoughts that get in the way of making it mean a certain thing. And like I say, if we change that meaning, whole different perspective can take place. We just have to be willing to look at it differently and to help those feelings mean what we want them to mean, and help them to move us forward to where we want to go, versus hold them back or try and suppress them like we often do. I don't want to feel anxious. I want it to go away, waiting for that moment to happen so that we can move forward. But if instead we just say, oh, actually, you know what? Nah, this is the same as being excited. I'll just choose excitement right now.
Totally. Here, and I have a question for you here. When you, in the past, applied this strategy of, I don't want to feel this fear or this anxiety, and I'm going to push it away, how effective has it been for you?
Oh, rubbish. Absolutely rubbish. It hasn't led to good results at all. No. I spent a lot of time doing that through my life, pushing it down. I don't want to feel that. It just means it's depleting.
Totally. Can you still hear me, by the way?
I can still hear you.
I think we had a little bit, we had a tech glitch there.
It's all good. Okay. It's all part of the parcel of being online, isn't it? I think it's amazing that I'm in New Zealand and you're in China. We can have this conversation and we can see each other, and
it's beautiful.
I think it's wonderful. It is. Absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm curious, because life's not all sunshine and rainbows, and I know we've talked a little bit about challenges. So I'm wondering if you would be willing to share a situation that perhaps things haven't gone quite to plan.
Oh, totally. Totally. I'm very open about that. And I personally have had quite some mental challenges. So depression. I got diagnosed at age 41 with ADD. So focus has been a big thing. But yeah, where am I going to start with challenges? Because I've many. Like, you can even assume that going to China in 2005 with just 2 suitcases to start a business without speaking Chinese is a challenge by itself. But let's say more on maybe a more recent challenge for me was sort of reinventing myself. So, and this is definitely something I want to share with entrepreneurs and founders. And I think there might be a few people here that can relate to that, is that before I really start to think about the different identities, I had just one identity, and it was the entrepreneur. And so the way I felt was always highly correlated to how well the business was going. And so between 2011 and 2018, in 2011, I started a business, had this idea to integrate a printing solution into the Instagram feed. Instagram was 5 months old, had a about 1 million users. Like think about today, it's 1 billion plus. And so we were super early. Turned out people didn't like the printing solution, but they loved our solution as a web viewer because Instagram didn't have a website, there was no Android app, and that whole app was on fire. So this product, we went from 0 to 35 million monthly active users in a couple of years. And we were a super small team. The printing didn't generate money, but obviously if you have so many visitors, and we had like 400 million page views a month, you just put 2 banner ads on the page and you're selling 800 million banners a month. And that definitely pays the bill. So I had this meteoric rise in this company, with this company, on the back of Instagram. And then in 2016, Instagram was already sold for a few years to Facebook, and the Cambridge Analytica problem showed up, and they basically they eliminated or they reduced the API access, which is basically the ability to interact with the Instagram database. They highly reduced that, and so our product got crippled. We fought back for a year and a half, got back from 35 million to 3 and back to 18, and then something else happened, and it was just game, set, match. It was over. And then we struggled for a while, and then I had to close down the company. And it was around the same time that I became first-time dad, and we also moved to a new city in China. Basically 3 weeks after my wife gave birth, she had to get back to work because she was just taking a new role to become a principal at an international school here in Shanghai. And as a young child, I lost my brother. And so I had a whole can of worms that opened up in those days because I was reliving my youth. I lost my identity. I just had a child here that the anxiety around losing really got amplified in that moment, because that was one of the things I closed the can many years ago, although I worked through it. But now becoming a dad totally changed the game. So I relived that, and so that was very challenging, and it took me. I would say actually, yeah, I know the date. COVID hit. It was February 2020. And we were in Sydney, of all places. We were in Australia for 1 week holiday. And in the middle of the holiday here, everything closed down in China, and we decided to stay longer. I had to take care of my daughter. I felt really challenging at the time. She was 3.5 years old. My wife was working around the clock to get to school back online. It's a long story, but I'll get to the punchline here. I read David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me, and I got an awakening moment where I said, I need to start running. And in the past, I would have sort of let the pain interfere with the objective. But because I was reading David's book, and I said, like, okay, pain is not something that's going to hold me back again. And then I started running, and I basically never stopped. And it has been transformational, because in that moment, so I felt like really in the ditch. What I believed in that moment was I need to commit to one thing, and especially on a physical level, because I couldn't think myself out of my mental problems. And like, it's very common. You need to solve that at a different level. So I picked running, and that sort of helped me regain trust and confidence in myself. And then through that, I end up deciding to get into coaching business. And really, because I just made that transition, and I felt like I really understood what was required to get from that place and sort of back on top. And then I decided, like, this is actually the most important thing that I learned in my life. And yeah, so it was a very challenging time, but definitely with a silver lining, and it totally helped me to get where I am right now.
Beautiful. I thank you so much for sharing that story, because what I heard was that it wasn't just one challenge, it was challenge after challenge that was thrown at you, eventually leading you to a point where there was that pivot moment of a book that gave you the inspiration of how to actually get yourself out of it and get on top and start your coaching journey as well. And there's so much that you shared in there, because it wasn't just what was happening in the present. There was triggers that were leading you back to your past and reliving past fears. And I just want to acknowledge you for the inner work and awareness that you have around that, to be able to move through it. I mean, some people don't get through those things. They wallow in it for years, and maybe they come out of it eventually. But for some people, they keep hold of the pain and unable to let it go, or don't have the tools to let it go. So I just want to acknowledge you for allowing yourself to learn from it and move through it, for seeing the opportunities and the opportunities for growth.
Yeah, thank you. Maybe in this context, I don't know if you think it would be a good thing to share also with the listeners about the hero's journey.
Yeah, please do, because that's very much the hero's journey that you've just shared. So I think it'd be totally relevant.
Yeah. So when the hero's journey is work contributed to Joseph Campbell. It's adopted by George Lucas in the Star Wars movies. It's basically the script for every Hollywood blockbuster. It's about the hero that lives in his old world, leaves the old world, which is the comfort zone, leaves the comfort zone, goes to the new world, which is outside of the comfort zone, is gonna deal with something, some sort of fear, some sort of resistance, some learning opportunity, and either decide to fight that fear or take on that learning opportunity, or decide not to. But I think what was really transformational for me is the awareness that there is something that comes after the fight. Because how often do we stop fighting because we think it's not worth it, because there's nothing to gain? And by getting that perspective of the hero's journey, because what happens is, as a hero, I'm out of the comfort zone. There's this dragon coming at me, makes me really uncomfortable. But hey, I decide to fight it, and I fight it to the teeth, and I keep on fighting till I slay the dragon. And when that happens, we always get the dragon's power. And the idea is then that we go back into our comfort zone. But at that time, our comfort zone is already expanded. And we can actually give that new insight, that new strength to ourselves and actually the people we want to take care of. So I want to highlight this point, that often when we're in the fight and when we're not aware that this is just a cycle, that there is always something to gain from fighting the dragon. And giving up on it can be extremely pricey. Like it can cost you in terms of trust, self-confidence, and it is my personal experience, and other people can obviously have other experiences. But in most of the cases, when we don't put ourselves really in physical danger, it is worth the fight.
Absolutely. I love how you shared the hero's journey there, because it's so powerful when we understand that journey from comfort zone to getting out into the discomfort zone where we're literally facing our fears and we're fighting through those. And could you imagine a world where, say, I think it was Edison that invented the light bulb, if after the 900th time or 999th time or however many times he
10,000 times, they say.
Can you imagine if he just given up at the and didn't try that once more to get the success and finally make it work? Because that's the hero's journey in a nutshell. It's all those failures, all those times where we've learned how it doesn't go, how it doesn't work, that eventually we'll get to. Well, it's like it's inevitable that the more we try, eventually we will find, as long as we're trying new things, we'll find the way that does work. We will break out.
It's interesting. I'll grab here something. So this is a book I created with my last company, when I took everybody on an expedition to the North Pole. So we were with 6 people to the North Pole. And the year before we went to the Sahara, and it was like, I did that because I wanted to put people out of the comfort zone. I want to literally feel like, hey, we're doing something that I would never do before. But so in this book, I put this quote in the first page, because we first flew to Oslo, and that's where you also have the Nobel. I don't know if it's called the Nobel Institute or like the committee that annually assigns the Nobel Prize. And so this is a quote from Alfred Nobel, and he says, like, if I have 1,000 ideas and only one turns out to be good, I'm satisfied. And I always find that really inspirational, because it's so easy to give up after 5 attempts that it didn't work. So here, I got here permission to fill 999 times with the belief that I will hit one time something that could be meaningful.
Beautiful. Oh, I love that. Yes, you're right. It really does give that permission, doesn't it, for things not to always work out, for things not to always be how we want them to be.
Totally. And I think, part of the entrepreneurial journey is, and what can be really, really challenging when you're an entrepreneur, is the way society views, let's say, the failure. Because now you're kind of earmarked as a failure or a loser, or but think about it. And there's this interesting book by Ian Rand. It's called, it's not The Fountainhead, but it's title will get back. I'll share the title with you. You can put it in the show notes. But it's about a society where all entrepreneurship is being taken away, and what that's going to look like. And because as entrepreneurs, we drive the innovation, we drive the job creation. Because if nobody is going to take a chance anymore, then what is the world going to look like?
It's going to look pretty mediocre, I reckon. It's the beautiful thing, isn't it, about entrepreneurs? But like you say, there's that expectation in society. And I remember when I first started my journey, my parents were like, and my friends, how's your job going? How's the business going? And I'd be like, it's not.
Yeah.
I'm going to admit it. It's like, and I've learned from Eben Pagan as well. It's like, to begin with, it takes time. It takes time to build the mental result, the mental capacity, the emotional resilience to keep getting up and fighting every day for yourself and for what you believe in. And as you're doing that, you're putting down roots. And he was like, he described, I think it's a bamboo. And he said that these gardeners, they have pots and pots of this bamboo, and they'll water it every day and nothing comes up, but bamboo grows really fast. But these particular ones, water them for 2 years, and then all of a sudden they shoot up.
Yeah.
It's like they've come out of nowhere, because they were just putting all of their energy down into their foundations, into the ground, so that when they, that moment when they're ready to go, they would just shoot up. And I think from what I heard from other entrepreneurs, that's kind of what it can be like. We like putting down our roots, and then once we've got everything in place, then success seems to just happen. But it didn't just happen.
Correct.
There was a lot of work that went into it beforehand. And that's where the comparison trap can come in too, when we start comparing ourselves to others and like, oh, they're doing okay. And it's like, yeah, but how long did it take them to get to that point that we didn't see? What was happening in the background?
Totally. Two things here. So one is you talk about the comparison trap. I think one thing that I had to learn and really create awareness around is that it's my journey. So the only thing I compare myself with is, let's say, how I showed up yesterday. Yesterday compared to today, or today compared to yesterday. Like, is there growth? Because for the rest, any other comparison really doesn't make any sense. And I had to learn that. And the other point I want to make is when we're on the journey of entrepreneurship, and for me, the same thing. My father calls me every 2 weeks. And the first thing he asks, how's the business? Because it is his discomfort. It is his fear of me not succeeding. It's not my fear. So when we talk to other people and they sort of are critical about our journey, be aware it's their fear, it's not your fear. And so leave it where it is. Don't make it your own. Because I think it's very easy to start identifying with that and sort of taking on those ideas but hey, we're different people. We have a different risk tolerance. We have different priorities in life. We have different drivers. So yeah, my father was very good at what he did. He was a solicitor back in the days, but he's always been extremely risk averse. He took over the business from his father. It was like a sailing ship, highly predictable. And then you have a son who graduate from college, can get into like a investment banking job, and then less than 2 years later walks away and goes travel the world. That doesn't really align with his worldview. But you know, it's my life. I need to do what I think I need to do. And I felt it wasn't that. I didn't know what it was. And I think I'm now starting to figure it out. It took me 50 years.
I love that. I love all that you've shared there. So what I'm taking away is compare yourself to yesterday. Don't worry about the other people around you. That's really a distraction. What really matters is your own journey. Stay in your lane. Look at where you were yesterday. Have you moved forward or not? If you haven't, then actually what can you do to move that needle forward so you can say, yes, I've grown. And the second point you were making about actually the fears that we think we might have that might be ours, might not be ours at all. They simply might be other people's that have been projected onto us that if we're not careful, we can own and make our own when they're not. And so we can allow ourselves then to let those go.
Totally. We don't need to take on the fears from other people. And towards the first point, like in terms of how to think, like one practice, also learned from Brian, is at the end of the day, my daily reflection is what went well, what needs work, and how am I going to optimize? And so what is the one thing I'm going to do different moving forward? So these three questions, very powerful, and always start with what worked well. Because for probably decennia, I would never look at what went well. My mind as an entrepreneur, I was always so hard on myself. I was so self-critical. Could never give myself any credit. So the fact that I now on a daily basis need to start, or have decided, it's not, I don't need anything. I decided that I adopt this practice and I start with what went well. That is, I start, let's say, tapping myself on the back a little bit for a few things that I did well that day, because there are always things that we do well, but it's so easy not to acknowledge yourself for that. And so starting with the positive has been a game changer for me personally, and I can see how that can help other entrepreneurs as well. Because it is like the entrepreneurial journey, and this is the founder of Napster. His name will come to me soon, but his quote was always, entrepreneurship is like chewing glass and liking it, because it is just crazy if you think about it. But for me, and I don't know, maybe Carrie, you can share that as well for you, but for me, my life long, I felt like I can't do any different. Even if it caused so much stress and extreme highs and lows, I can't do anything else. So this is just, it's my how do you call that? Your curse and your, what's the other, how would we express that? Carrie,
not coming to me. I was trying to tap into that too.
But this is our strength and our curse. Maybe
yeah, it's like the curse or the gift, isn't it?
Yeah,
I guess.
Totally.
And I totally hear you on that too, because I can honestly say my journey's been, it's kind of like that. I keep feeling like, it's like there's something pulling me, even though sometimes it feels like it's really challenging. If all the days I think I just want to give up, it's like, no, I get up and I'm driven. It's like I have to do it. I have to get the messages out there somehow. I have to help people in the ways that I can. And it's like, it's not an option to just give up.
Yeah. Here, maybe one insight that I like to share here also for fellow entrepreneurs: find a mentor or a coach or somebody has done it before. Because nowadays, personally, I have 4 coaches. Yeah, I have a running coach, I have a business coach, I have a mindset coach, and then I have sort of a business mentor. But I mean, like, I leverage everything, all the connections I can to get to the answers faster. Because sometimes we feel like we all need to do it. We're on this grand journey and we have this vision and we're the only ones who know this, how to do this. And if I could do one thing differently, I would surround myself much earlier on with more teachers and let myself be guided more. And so leverage that. If you're an entrepreneur, you start on this journey, get somebody in your corner that you can talk to on a weekly basis or ad hoc basis, but somebody you trust, who has that experience, who knows what he or she is talking about and can help you, let's say, deal with the basic decisions that we all have to make as entrepreneurs, because we need to make thousands and thousands of decisions, but help you navigate to best deal with those decisions, because there's definitely a lot to gain there. And I started using that as well. In my coaching practice, I decided to surround myself with people who did it before, who could give me the blueprint, because I built multiple companies just from scratch without a blueprint, never done it before, just dived in, and man, it's brutal. It takes you years to get to a point of, okay, now I feel like I know what I'm doing. But think about it. If you, and this is another strategy for people who think about entrepreneurship or do have an idea, find maybe an apprenticeship. Go somewhere there where you can learn the basics that are valuable for the business idea that you have in mind. Because what it will allow you to do is basically see how things are running consider what is working well. So boom, you can adapt that from day one versus figure everything out yourself from day one, which is a lot. And then you only need to focus on those things that you think they do incorrectly or for whatever reason you want to do differently. That is a life, that is a lifesaver then. And so for me, I recognize in other people the journey and the lessons they're willing to share. And I look at it in a way like, okay, all these things, man, I don't need to figure this out anymore. I just need to implement it well. And then I'm starting to innovate on top of that. And that makes the journey so much faster and the likelihood of success so much higher. So I don't know if that's valuable, but I just want to share that.
Oh, absolutely. It's so much gold in there. Again, there's lots of different aspects to what you were sharing. So what I'm taking from what you just shared was, like the hero's journey in Star Wars, get yourself someone in your corner. Because at the end of the day, Yoda knew the end of the story. Yoda knew how it was all going to turn out. Yoda knew that Luke Skywalker was going to come and save the day. He knew all that stuff. Yeah. Skywalker didn't know that. But he had to go through all the struggles and the challenges and the hardships to be able to become the man who could face those challenges and come out successful. But Yoda already knew that. So finding someone in our corner who already knows how the story is going to end and can believe in you and give you the tools to help you succeed is a game changer. And like you, I wish I'd actually got myself coaches and people in my corner sooner. I kept trying to do it all on my own. And I've noticed that my growth has definitely improved since finding coaches that I've needed. And I've gone through a few before I found some that I'm like, yes, this is the person who can really help me move forward now. I'm committed to that. So it's also recognizing you might not find the right person straight away. And I love what you were sharing about having lots of different mentors, lots of different coaches in specific areas, because some people might do one area of their life really freaking well, and the rest of it might be awful.
Totally.
So find the people who are specializing in the thing that you want to succeed in, and you're going to succeed in that area for sure.
For sure. I totally
modeling.
agree.
You're also sharing about modeling as well. So looking at what's working in the world, model that. Don't try and reinvent the wheel. Find a wheel that works.
Totally.
And that don't work.
Yeah, make the analogy, never start with a clean slate. Always start off with a blueprint you borrowed for somebody else.
Love that. Yeah. So much easier, isn't it?
Totally. And here we
the bits that work, there's the bits that don't, tweak the bit, and that's a lot less work than trying to create it all from scratch.
Correct. But we often just forget about that option. We think we have to do it all ourselves. We think that we're the first ones who are doing this, and we're not. We're not. Like the majority of the innovations are just, let's say, a new way of combining things that have been there forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, Carel, I'm loving this conversation, and I'm aware of the time. So I'm wondering if there was just one thing that you would like our listeners to take away from our chat today, what would it be?
I mean, I think. So let me sort of get back to a few of the things we talked about. I think the framework is important. So start with figuring out your identities for your energy, your work, and your relationship. Figure out your character strength. Start applying them. Create behavior that enforces those character strength, and through that bridge the gap between where you are today and where you want to be. But I think we just talked about the whole teacher mentorship, very important. But ultimately, I think the hero's journey. But here, maybe I'm just talking, and in here I am talking from my perspective. And we always talk out of our own experience and own perspective. But I think what's super important here is that when you start to fight, that you know that there is something on the other end. It's not like there is nothing, so just give up and forget about it. There is something to gain by taking on that fight. And the way I look at it right now is when resistance comes my way, I always envision that as a teacher knocking on the door that invites me to learn something, and something that is actually meaningful for me in the moment. So if there's one thing I would really want to emphasize here is when discomfort comes your way, lean into it. Lean into it. Work with it. Like grow through it. It's a teacher. It's an opportunity. And at every moment, we have the opportunity to step into the growth or back into the safety. And so every time that the discomfort shows up, like this disguised teacher, we have an opportunity to gain a little bit more of that superpower and to become a little bit more whole. Because it's clearly when that resistance comes up, it's a limitation. It's often perceived as a limitation of expressing ourselves. And so when we step into that fear or the discomfort, we become a little more whole. So I think if you just take one thing away from this conversation, I hope it's this thing, that there's something to gain by leaning into the discomfort and go through the motions and come out the other end.
Beautiful. And that's a beautiful thing to end on. So leaning into that discomfort, you will be rewarded for it. Totally.
And the beautiful thing is you can only get rewarded by doing it yourself. Nobody can do it for you. So there's no excuses. There is nobody else to look at. This is us dealing with our discomfort and choosing to grow or deciding to stay safe.
Yeah,
and it's a muscle. It is a muscle. So once you get used to it, it does become easier.
So what I'm here to share that is that every time you choose to lean into that discomfort, you're building that muscle to keep showing up and keep going into that discomfort to get the reward that you want. Every time that we choose comfort, we're denying ourselves getting to that reward that we desire, that little bit more. It's like, not to say we won't ever get that, it's just that we've got to, and I know from my journey, I wish I could say that, yes, I've always leaned into my discomfort. It's like, I'll lean in and I'll be like, oh crap, that was scary. I'll lean back. Yeah. And I'll go, okay, that's too comfortable now. I know I need to lean forward, so I'll lean forward. And sometimes I might lean forward again, and then I'll come back. And it's like sometimes it can feel like one step forward, two steps back. But the point is, what matters is that we keep choosing to move forward. We keep leaning into that discomfort, and eventually we will get there.
Totally.
And it will become more comfortable as the more we lean in.
And it's this whole idea of getting comfortable being uncomfortable. And that is an important aspect. And it's hard, like this is part of the human condition. This is going to be hard for everybody. It's hard for me, it's hard for everybody. But Maslow, he said, like, what one can be, one must be. And so our despair at times comes from the fact that we don't live up to who we can be. And you will see that automatically happiness, well-being is related to actually growth, to leaning in. You can't get there by only stepping back. Because deep down, there is that voice that says, you can do better. You can do better. It's uncomfortable, but you can do it, and then not doing it is never contribute to that feeling of growth and happiness and well-being.
Yeah, so true. Does not lead for a fulfilling life, that's for sure. If we could just sit on the couch all day, don't know about you, I've had days like that and I've just been on the couch and it's like, yeah, but there's only so much that I can do before I feel like I've got to get up and move now. I've got to do something with my body, with my life, because that's not sustainable. It doesn't inspire me. Eventually, just got to get out.
Correct.
It doesn't matter how long it takes. What matters to get up.
Totally. And that makes it also circle back why the holistic approach is so important, also for entrepreneurs, because personally, I always say, like, as an entrepreneur, we're not doing a sprint, we're participating in a marathon. So you can never, if you approach entrepreneurship as a sprint, you're going to be burned out in a heartbeat. So you need to make it sustainable. You can only do that when you optimize for energy. Otherwise, it's just not going to happen. And here's the thing. Personally, I've had so many times that I would even skip a night of sleep. And nowadays, what we know with research about sleep, read Why We Sleep from Matthew Walker, you will know that even if you sleep for 4 hours, your brain is so impaired and is similar to somebody who's not allowed to drive anymore because they hit the alcohol threshold. We're just not aware how not taking care of us impairs our ability to do good work. So to me, it's like, whereas in the past I was optimizing for as many hours in the day of doing things, now I start with sleep. So it's non-negotiable. Sleep and running, non-negotiable anymore.
Beautiful. Oh my goodness, so much gold here, Carel. It's like we could go on and on, couldn't we?
Oh yeah, we could talk all day, Carrie. I love this stuff.
Oh, I know the feeling all too well. It's like, I know when I was doing this with Kelly as well, we were doing conversations across the ditch, and we would do this too, like, oh, but then we've gone down another rabbit hole.
I hear you. I know, I see myself already going into other topics again, but yeah. It was definitely a pleasure having this conversation with you, and I trust that your listeners will get one or two things out of it.
Oh, I'm sure they'll get more than that out of it, Carel. Speaking of which, if they want to reach out to you for more information, where should they come?
Very simple. It's coachcarel.com, and it's Carel, you spell CAREL.com. So coachcarel.com.
And is there anything you'd like them to do? Is there something that you've got on offer perhaps for them as a next step?
Yeah, so if people are interested in what I just shared here, mentoring, coaching, I do offer a 12-week program, and we really go over establishing all these habits and routines and these structures. So it's not just only teaching, but it is practicing, putting it into action, creating results. So we do that in a 12-week process. And the people I've been working with that have been doing this already have seen phenomenal results. So I'm very confident that that is a framework that can help a lot of people, and especially entrepreneurs. I dare to say that I have a good understanding of the entrepreneurial mindset, the challenges. Like I said, I've been diagnosed with dyslexia, ADD. ADD is a common trait amongst entrepreneurs, founders. And so there's a high correlation between having ADD and this purpose of having to be an entrepreneur. So love to share my experience. I worked with the #1 institute in the US for 7 years. as they help me navigate my ADD challenges there. And so these are things I help founders with. So if people are interested, you can connect with me. Happy to talk to them. Just give them an experience. Like for 1 or 2 hours, we'll be talking. We'll work towards one of your challenges. And if you think we're a good match afterwards, we can talk about how we can work together beyond that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Carel. I'm sure that there'll be people hammering at your door to get their hands on that, especially after all the value you've just shared today. So that was Carel, Carel.com.
Correct. Thank you so much for sharing
Beautiful.
that. Appreciate it.
Oh, good. I appreciate you sharing, Carel. It's been a fantastic conversation. And if it's okay, I'll just offer anyone who just wants to know a little bit more about their behavior patterns, what's holding them back, and how they can navigate their gifts so that perhaps they're not aware of, then simply come over to my website, carrieadlington.com. That's CarrieAdlington.com. And hop on there and just simply register for the free profiling tool. And you'll find heaps of information that you perhaps didn't know about yourself when it comes to overwhelm and your behaviors that are holding you back in that state, which it's phenomenal what you'll find there, I assure you, and the gifts that you're not even aware of that you can unleash from those behavior patterns as well. So thank you so much again, Carel. This has been a fabulous conversation. Thank you to all of our listeners for staying till the end and receiving these beautiful gifts. And we look forward to seeing you in the next podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Karen. It was a pleasure and a delight to have this conversation.
Thank you so much.